Welcome to My Shirt Tag is Bugging Me: How Understanding the Sensory System Can Affect Learning. In today's presentation, we will examine everyday sensory issues that many of us may have. Then we will look at the variety of sensory systems our bodies have. Next, we will look at the differences between sensory processing and when a child may have a sensory processing disorder. Finally, I will share many different activities that could easily be implemented at home or in school to help children who are suffering from sensory processing disorders. In today's presentation, the following DEC standards will be addressed. No matter which research-based curriculum you are using, you want to make sure you are being culturally responsive and you're supporting the needs of each student. As professionals working with young children, you use responsive interactions, interventions, and instructions, and provide supports across environments to help children be as successful as possible in natural and inclusive environments. Think about this as I ask how you feel. What bugs you? How do you feel when you're wearing a turtleneck? Do you feel warm, protected, and secure? Or do you feel claustrophobic, hot, like you're being strangled? How do you feel sitting on grass? Does it feel soft and soothing? Or does it feel like pins and needles going into your legs? How do you feel going on a roller coasters? Is the rush exhilarating, or do you feel like you may lose your last meal and you can't wait to get off? How do you feel about tags in your shirt? What tag are you talking about? Or does it feel like a piece of glass is going into the back of your neck? Or what is this annoying thing digging into me all day long? How do you feel wearing a watch? It itches, or it feels like my wrist may come off. I don't even realize when I have one on. How do you feel being around someone wearing a strong perfume? The smell calms me and I feel like I'm in a garden. Or you think you may get sick any second. How do you feel going to the dentist? No problem, no worries. Or the sound of the drill scraping on your teeth makes the hair on your back stick up. How do you feel about cream or lotion going onto your body? It feels so soft and calming when I rub it in. It feels sticky and yucky all day long. How do you feel when you're in crowds? It feels like I'm going to be squished and I'll be trapped. I can push my way right to where I need to go. How do you feel riding on a glass elevator? I love seeing the view. I'm the one plastered against the wall until I hit my floor. How do you feel about scented candles burning? I love the smell. The smell makes me sick. We all have some types of sensory issues. With most of us, though, we can get through the uncomfortable situation and go on with our day. But for some people, the sensory sensation can stop them in their tracks and they can't carry on with their day. We all have 7 sensory systems. There are 3 main systems, and these are known as our power systems. The first is the tactile system. This system allows us to feel the difference between light versus deep, strong touch. It also allows us to feel the difference in temperature and feel different textures. Next is the vestibular system. This system coordinates movement of the eyes, head, and body. We all have sensors in our inner ear that sense all movement. think for a moment how you feel when your ears are stuffed from a cold. The last main system is proprioceptive system. This system processes all the information that we receive in our joints. We have receptors in muscles and joints that let us know where we are in space. The final four systems are visual for sight, auditory for hearing, olfactory for smell, and gustatory for taste. These are minor senses, but still very important. Preschoolers must learn to coordinate all seven senses to learn about their world and function effectively. This is a lot, especially if one system isn't functioning at proper capacity. Even if all the systems are working okay, it's a lot of hard work for young children to effectively figure out how to get all their systems to work together. This is often why young children have meltdowns. They may be having difficulties regulating one or more of their sensory systems. For example, you're all excited for your 3-year-old's first trip to Disney, but after their first ride on the teacups, he has a major meltdown as you try to get him back into the stroller. You've handed him a corn dog to eat on a stick, and it's 85 degrees and sunny. Think about all the sensory systems your child may be attempting to coordinate right now. What is sensory integration? It's the ability of the central nervous system to process and organize sensory input from different sensory channels to function in daily life. It's the procedure of taking in and organizing messages from our bodies and environment to move, play, and learn. Sensory integration, learning, behavior, and motor skills are independent functions of the brain. This is a lot for a young child and their developing brain. What is sensory integration dysfunction? For some children, it's very difficult to process all the messages from their different senses. When this happens, we say there is a sensory integration dysfunction. Can you think of a student who you know has a sensory integration dysfunction or you suspect has one? Now, think about this definition and think what that child might be going through. The definition for sensory integration dysfunction is difficulty in processing sensory input in the brain in order to analyze, organize, and integrate sensory messages. The child cannot respond to information to behave in a meaningful, consistent way. The child may have difficulties using sensory information to plan and organize what he needs. Children like this have a sensory deficit in one or more sensory system, and they'll need supports and home and school to be successful and calmer. Life for these children feels like a constant traffic jam. What do these kids look like? We might see problems exhibited in learning, in motor or behavior. We might also see some coordination problems, or maybe they have a short attention span. Maybe their handwriting or cutting is very difficult. There may be a high or a low activity level. We might see hair that isn't brushed, and there are other self-care problems. As they get older, there may be a low self-esteem. We can also see an oversensitivity to touch, light, or sound. You may see several of these issues or just one or two. No two kids will have the same issues. When a child with a sensory integration disorder acts out, he or she is not being bad. They're upset by some sensory stimuli, and acting out or misbehaving may be the only way he or she knows how to respond. It's our job as teachers to be a detective and see what system may not be working properly and to seek help and offer suggestions from an occupational therapist. There are three types of kids. The reason why it's important to seek the help from an occupational therapist is that not all children with sensory integration dysfunction, or SID, are avoiding or seeking the same kind of sensory input. If you provide something a child doesn't need, it could either be alarming to the child or provide no input at all. We see children reacting differently to different stimuli. Our sensory overresponder. This child is hypersensitive and needs a break from stimuli. These are individuals who overrespond to stimuli. Things just seem too loud, too hard, too heavy, too sticky, too wet, and just too much. Sensory overresponders do not like to get messy. They avoid noisy public places as well as tags in their clothing. Our sensory seekers are hyposensitive and need more input. These individuals are constantly touching, pushing, grabbing, shouting, jumping, biting, and on the move. These children get in trouble a lot because they don't know how to use their energy appropriately. Finally, there is the sensory underresponder. This child needs more input to their body. These are individuals who underrespond to stimuli. They don't hear their name when they're called. They lose their backpack. They walk around slouching. They fall down. They forget and they're disorganized. Our sensory underresponders are often lost in a big crowd. It's important to know and understand our individual students. Now let's take a closer look at these three types of children. Our sensory overresponder. Remember, they're overresponsive to sensation from one or more sensory system. And these children may be over-aroused and respond to certain sensory input as if it was irritating or painful. These children have an active behavior response, but a low neurological threshold. Can you think of a student like this? I once had a student who would scream, yell, and run out of the room when the Pledge of Allegiance came on over the loudspeaker. He would run out. Interestingly, though, he would stand in a foyer until the Pledge of Allegiance was over. He would come back into the room, and then he would say the pledge. I share this example to point out these children are not acting out of control or they don't want to learn. They just can't handle the stimuli coming in. This child may be distressed by changes in routine, loud noises, and crowded settings. You'll see this child not wanting to touch or do messy activities. This is the child that doesn't like the way a shirt feels, or their pants, or their socks. They don't like to be moved. On the playground, you don't see them running, climbing, or jumping, and they're avoiding other fine motor tasks. You might see them cover their eyes or their ears, and they may be distracted because they're paying attention to all the stimuli in the room. This child may be distracted by background noises that others just don't seem to hear. I once had a student that said to me, "I'm not listening to the big lawnmower going by the window." He knew he was supposed to block it out, but he just couldn't. You can't force a child who is an overresponder to do an activity they're avoiding. It could be so fearful to them. We have to work to desensitize with small steps. For example, if you have a student that won't finger paint, put paint in a Ziploc bag, or let that student use a stick to paint with. They're still doing the activity the other students are doing. There is just a modification to the materials. Have you ever had a student who wears shorts all year long or hates wearing socks and always pulls them off? What about the student that never wants to go on the swing? Or when you go to an assembly in the gym, this child is covering their ears the whole time. Can you think of a student like this? What did he or she do? Whatever you do, the steps to get the student to try have to be tiny. With my little boy that ran out of the room when the pledge came on, the first step was to open the door to the foyer while he was standing there. Next, he stood next to the door of the foyer with his headphones on. Next, he sat outside the classroom. By the end of the year, he was able to stay in the room but needed his headphones on. These were small baby steps that took him the whole year to accomplish, and rushing didn't work. These children have an extreme response or a fear to a sudden, high-pitched, loud, or metallic sound like flushing of a toilet, silverware clanking together, or other sounds just might seem offensive to them. As I said, they can notice background noises that can really be distracting. They may be fearful of a surprise touch. They might avoid hugs and cuddling, even with a familiar family member. They seem fearful in crowds, and they might avoid proximity to other people. They don't enjoy a game of tag, and they might not like swinging on the playground. They're extremely fearful of climbing or falling, even when there's no real danger. How can we help these children? Some of these ideas are from a wonderful book called Tools for Tots by Diana Henry, Maureen Kane Wineland, and Susan Swendelman. Remember, it's always best to consult with the student's occupational therapist. If we choose what to do for the child, it could provide the wrong sensation. How about trying walking or running on different surfaces? Provide swings, slides, climbers, and bouncers. Let the child hold a calming toy when trying a scary new activity. Suggest the use of a weighted blanket at home. Pull the child in a tight laundry basket. We should have a variety of sensory toys in the classroom and let the child pick. What is soothing one week may not do the trick the next week. How do you provide some of these options in your classroom? Most of us don't have swings in the classroom, but are there opportunities during the day to swing outside, in a gross motor room, or in a sensory room? These are some examples of activities you can do in your classroom to help the sensory over-responder, and they're easy enough to share with parents to do at home. The first one is walking on different surfaces. This could be done on tile, to carpet, to cement, to grass. But in this picture, it shows a boy playing on sensory circles. All these are cut-out cardboard circles from a box and glued on different textures. There's cotton, tissue, and foam. The next picture shows painting with rings and sponges. This would be a great activity if a child doesn't like to be messy. If children are finger painting, this is a nice adaptation so the child can participate right along with his peers. The final picture on the far right shows a sensory calming corner. We should have these set up in our classrooms and suggest that parents make a calming corner at home. All you need are some soothing sensory items that a child can choose from. In this picture, there's a soft beanbag chair, some soft stuffed animals, a cozy blanket, and some books to choose from. A child can go there as they're trying to calm their body down. Now our sensory seekers. Remember, these are the children that are craving more input. Their body just doesn't seem to stop. This is the kid sticking their whole body in your sand table. They crave excessive stimulation from one or more of their sensory systems. This child seeks more stimulation than other children around them. This is the child that never seems to be satisfied. They just can't seem to get enough. They may seem to have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This kid is always moving. They're always touching something and everybody as you walk down the hall. He's also the child that has difficulty keeping his or her hands to themselves during circle time. Do you know the child I'm talking about? But remember, they're in constant need to touch people or textures, even when it's inappropriate to do so. They don't understand personal space, even when same-age peers are old enough to understand it. They often harm other children or pets when playing. They don't understand their own strength. They may be very fidgety and unable to sit still. They enjoy movement-based activities like jumping or spinning. They seem to be the thrill seeker and can be dangerous at times. But remember, they're not doing this to bother you or to be bad. This is their sensory system overreacting. Here are 6 ways you can calm your sensory seeker. This is from a blog post from the website funandfunction.com. Try a hug. These children seem to respond to deep pressure. Sit in a tight space or roll them in a mat. Start out gently to the hug and see how they respond. Let this child move. There should be regular movement breaks in their schedules. Could you use a small trampoline, a little ball pit, take a walk down the hall? This kid could benefit from swinging. Is there an indoor swing someplace that could be available? The swinging stimulates the vestibular system, which is calming. Even a hammock swing could do. Is there a space in your class or a special room where these children can just have a look at something? A calming area, a fish tank to look at, soothing lights. The same with space for listening. Can they listen to environmental sounds or Mozart soothing music? This will calm their nervous system. Finally, what is set up for the child to touch? Are there soft materials like some chenille, polar fleece, small sensory bin, or a rice bin? Instead of telling them what they can't touch, what have you set up that they can touch and look at and listen to calm their bodies? How can we adapt for these children? These are visuals of some of the ideas and strategies I just mentioned. Think about how you could integrate these into your classroom. Or what suggestions could you make to a parent for a sensory seeker? Here's the mini trampoline. Here's a mini fish tank. Here's an in-home swing that can easily be set up. And the top right corner is a wiggle seat that a child could sit on to try to help them sit still but still give them movement. All very inexpensive ideas that could really help that sensory seeker calm their sensory system. Finally, we have the sensory under-responder. Their sensory system responds too little to input. They just don't seem to notice input from one or more of the sensory systems that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. The sensory under-responder. These are the children that appear indifferent to sensory experiences. They have a high tolerance for pain. They may react very slowly. They may need especially strong inputs before they will even respond. They appear lazy, slow, disinterested. It's hard to engage these children at times. This is the child who may fall and scrape his knee and doesn't seem to cry. I had a student who would bump into every table before she chose which center she wanted to go to. Here are some more characteristics you may notice for a sensory under-responder. They could be clumsy and uncoordinated, have poor balance and fall a lot, have an extremely high tolerance for or indifference to pain. They don't respond to their name or have to be called over and over. They seem forgetful, drop things, appear disorganized. Their muscles may be low tone, and they may miss visual cues that are easy to notice or see. Can you think of a sensory under-responder you have had in your class? Do you have a child always knocking into things, or maybe falls, or maybe doesn't cry? You may have a sensory under-responder and not even realize it. How can we help these children? Again, these are some more suggestions from Tools for Tots. We want to wake up their sensory systems. Think of some pushing or pulling activities, change in temperature, a hand fidget, an exercise ball, movement breaks, activities that involve crawling or rolling or being rolled in a mat. These kids are usually relaxed and don't overreact under pressure. Strategies should help them organize and alert their system. They may benefit from tools that help them stay focused and alert, such as sitting on a therapy ball or sitting on a wiggle cushion, having an individual timer or a rocker board to stand on. The following is a short video of a boy describing what it is like to live with a sensory processing disorder and how, through having occupational therapy, he's learning how to regulate his own body. Please watch this video to truly understand what it's like to live with a sensory processing disorder. Press the arrow and listen. sensory fidget would you pick from these pictures? The ooey gooey orange putty? A bin filled with water beads? Do you like a slinky? Do you like a flashing light ball? Do you like a fidget that's soft and slimy? Or do you like a fidget that makes noise or prickly? Why would you pick that toy? Is there a sensory item you would not play with? Do you have a basket of sensory toys for your students to choose from in your classroom? Is there a particular toy you really like to hold? Or as I said, is there a toy you hate to pick up? We should never choose the fidget for the child for this reason. What you like may be awful for that child. What's soothing for you may be alerting for that child. What worked one week may not be working the next week. Make sure the fidgets and sensory breaks you have address the different sensory systems. This hammer toy provides heavy work and proprioceptive input. This could provide input to a student's joints and help a child focus. Our fidget toys can be calming, soothing, and provide needed tactile input. A hard one could provide deep pressure or proprioceptive input. A glow-in-the-dark fidget could be soothing and provide input that could help a child concentrate or just take a break. They're all types of sensory balls, just like these little fidget balloons that can be filled with talcum powder to give a nice tactile sensation. You could add a few drops of essential oil to Play-Doh to provide some olfactory input. We all know that a water table can provide hours of sensory input for many children. But please remember this. These kids will look very different. Each child is a puzzle, and we need to be figuring out how we can help each child individually. No child will have every symptom. Sensory processing can vary from day to day. No two children are the same. A child will probably have difficulty with more than one input. No means no. In order to prevent problems, we as teachers need to be sensory aware. Can you think of things that were changed in your classroom to help a child who was having sensory issues? Behaviors that we observe may be the result of overstimulation or understimulation from something in our classroom. Respect the child's emotions. First, consider changing the environment. Adjust the sensory input to help the child. It's easy to add activities. Think about how you could add sensory input from different sensory systems we talked about at the beginning of the webinar. Again, many of these suggestions can be shared with parents and could easily be set up at home. During circle time, could you offer a pump of lotion? Ask the kids if they want some lotion on their arm as a transition activity. You could have lavender lotion that could be soothing for some children. Do you offer a variety of small toys that children can hold to give them tactile input? Do some of them have a vibrating feature to it? Again, if I don't like messy painting, just offer me unpainting. I get to use a tool instead of touching that paint. Something else can touch the paint. I can have a glove, I could have a sponge, or I could have a stick. You could do a hot dog bun roll. If you roll a child in the mat, that might give them some tactile sensation and help the child be calm and soothing. Temple Grandin, a famous author with autism, actually invented a squeeze machine for herself to calm her when she was upset. To stimulate the vestibular system, You could have a sit and spin in your classroom. Again, we've talked about the swing. Can a child bounce on a therapy ball? Can they roll across a mat? Could they use a scooter board to lie on their stomach? And many of these items could be used to transition from activity to activity. How can we stimulate the proprioceptive system for children? There are many types of crash pads that can be purchased now, or in the fall, you could fill a garbage bag with leaves, and that could act as a crash pad, or a beanbag chair, or even a dog bed. Many schools now have a sensory hallways to give children proprioceptive input while walking down the hall. By providing kids with the input, they may be calmer or better able to focus when they arrive where they are walking to. Here again are some fun sensory activities you can set up in the classroom or share with parents. All young children benefit from sensory play, whether they have a sensory integration disorder or not. The first picture is a construction box. Add some small rocks and construction matchbox cars. Children will love the texture of the rocks and the sound they make as they drop them. The top picture is a magnetic sensory bin with birdseed. Hide different items in the bin, and the children have to use the magnetic wand to find the magnetic items. The bottom picture are squishy bags made from hair gel and food coloring in a double Ziploc bag. You can even put a few items in the bag for the child to move around for some more sensory fun. The first two pictures are finger painting in a bag. Just add the paint to a double Ziploc bag, and the children can paint and make shapes with their fingers or a tool in the bag. You can see also that the sensation of touching it or having it on your head may add some different sensory sensation. The far right picture is warm water, a whisk, and soap flakes and food coloring. Let the child whisk the paint together to see the patterns that they can create. A wonderful idea is to make a sensory board from an old table. You can add, if you search this on Pinterest, hundreds of ideas will come up. You can create the board, just make sure you're addressing as many senses as possible. So, on this board here, there's an old pot that could be banged. There's an old xylophone. There are sand timers. There's fabric. There's a pan with different bumps on it. There are different lights. There's many, many ways you can make these tables. They can be big, they can be little, but they can add all types of sensory input from all 7 senses that a child can play with. The far right picture is cheap dollar store frames, and all we've done is put different types of fabric in them. And here the children can touch the different fabric, or again, they could rub their feet or their hands on the fabric. Don't forget how easy it is to make sensory bottles. We can put different colors, different types of glitter, different types of oil, hair gel. You can play I Spy. We can use these for calming. They're very easy to make. Just make sure you glue the top on. We also can make easy sensory bags with food coloring and hair gel, and we tape the top. And the bags can have all different types of sensory items, from I Spy games to calm us to sparkles to a favorite toy, anything that won't rip through the bag. I love the idea of cutting up old pool noodles to give the children tactile and proprioceptive input. There's many, many ideas that can be done with these discs. And then finally, a little Halloween activity could be the 5 little pumpkins, and in here we have pom-poms or beans or wood, and you can have scoopers and tweezers, all for the children to fill up the pumpkins. And this can be adapted for any holiday. but it's giving the children some more sensory input that they might need. I've provided lots of suggestions of things you can do to help our children that may be having some sensory integration dysfunction. Here are some items that every classroom should have. We all should have a cozy corner or a calm down corner. It's not enough just to set up the area in your classroom. You need to teach the children how to use it. Know your students. The materials you have may change from year to year. You may need some noise-canceling headphones one year, and the next year books and soft toys may be enough. Teach the children how to deep breathe. Have books to teach them about their emotions. As I stated earlier, fidgets need to be available all day long for all children to choose from. The children that do not need them will stop picking them up, but the children that do need them will know they're there, and it's a resource they can use to help settle or calm their bodies if needed. Sometimes the bright overhead lights can be very distracting and overstimulating. Is there an area in your room where you could have some soft light? All classrooms should have a sand and water table. Some programs have requirements that there must be something that can be scooped, poured, or filled. If this is the case, have some bins with some other sensory types of materials your students may like. Many schools have started to integrate sensory hallways so when children walk down the hall, they can stimulate their senses. Finally, have some type of weighted lap pad that children can sit on or use or put on top of them to help them concentrate better. There are many, many suggestions, but these are probably the most important that every early childhood classroom should have to help that child that might have some sensory overload or need some more sensory stimulation. And remember, sometimes you need to look at the world a different way to see how amazing children with sensory processing disorder can be. Thank you for listening today. I hope you learned something new about helping children learn about their sensory systems and helping the student that may need some different inputs to help him be more successful in school starting at a young age. Thank you very much.